I'm Mary Magdalene. I wish I could see you. I imagine you. And speaking of imagination, the time has come to address some of the many lies, myths, fantasies, truth, and fiction about me, who I was, and who I am. I'll be putting on my glasses to read them. There are so many stories of me. Now, in the last 20 years, a couple became very prominent and now really dominate. But there's many, 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 many stories. Some complimentary, some not. And very few true. So let me start. Some of these you will have heard of, but I bet not all. So in Gaul, which today consists primarily France, Belgium, Luxembourg, and parts of Germany and Holland. That's would be Gaul. So one story is that I and Martha, I guess, saying that Mary Magdalene and Martha were sisters, which is not true, and Lazarus, and a handful of followers leave and end up on the shores of Gaul by their own choice. Another says they're pushed off without an oar, and a magical wind takes them to the shores of Gaul. And then there's different versions about what happens to them, to me, to us, once we land. Some say that I preached throughout the country, went north through and preached throughout the country. Some say that I lived in a cave and preached from the cave daily, and others that I lived in a cave as penitence for being a whore, which it never says anything about me being a whore because I wasn't anywhere in the Christian Bible. So I certainly wasn't perfect, but I didn't need to pay penitence in that way by any means. Now, some of those stories have me arriving pregnant with Jesus' child. Some have me arriving with a girl named Sarah, sometimes saying that Sarah is Jesus' child, and sometimes saying that I have a child that I adopted named Sarah, and I'm pregnant with Jesus' child. And then there's times that the child with me is a boy. And those children, which didn't exist, in many cases end up marrying into this family that was made famous. They were a very powerful Frank family who their god was, I think, half fish and half human, or half fish and half bull, something. I'm sure you can look it up on Google. I probably don't pronounce their names correctly. It's something like Mergorovians. But that was made famous in the Da Vinci Code and Holy Blood and Holy Grail, that one of my and Jesus' children married into that family, so that now, surprise, surprise, they're linked to the new religion, where as their religion and their God and gods diminished, it was a way to link them into the new religion. So those are a few in France. And then there's so many others that include Jesus survived the cross, that it was a hologram on the cross, or that he had a twin brother, because Didymus does mean twin. And in fact, Thomas means twin in our language. So that was Jesus' twin, and he went on the cross in place of Jesus so that Jesus could live, and he and I lived together, in some cases in France, and had many children together, and in other cases in other countries, and we had many children together. Part of me wishes that was true, certainly that Jesus had survived the cross. That is not true. So the Holy Grail in the circumstances of children, it's the child that becomes the Holy Grail. But there's also one that says that I managed to keep this cup that Jesus drank from and presented it to the nuns in Marseille after my boat lands. Now I want you to look at the distance between Israel going through a lot of sea and past a lot of islands and other lands, but I magically end up in France. In any case, you know, the thing to understand, and I will talk about what happened in the split of what was called the Universal Church and became the Roman Catholic and the Eastern Orthodox Church, probably in the next 1 or 2 videos. The thing to understand is that as Christianity, what became Christianity, took over other religions, everybody wanted a part of that, a piece of that. Many for good reasons, wanting to reach out and be close, and then of course some not for very good reasons, because they wanted to find a way to make money, or because they wanted to say that their land, their town, their country had as much right and closeness to Jesus as any other, including Israel. And so it set up a competition. There's stories that the wedding at Cana was, in fact, a wedding that I was supposed to be married to John, and that John decided to follow Jesus before or after our marriage, and left me. There's one that says, at least one that says, we both, after our marriage, decided we wanted to follow Jesus, or before our marriage, and so didn't get married, to become disciples of Jesus. And then I've even heard that Jesus was the groom at the wedding of Cana, and when the first miracle happened, he realized he had a higher calling. It's truly hard to remember them all. So things to ask yourself, because I've certainly been around enough to know that people tend to believe whatever they want to believe. So just ask yourself a couple of things. Count up the body parts, the places that say they have part or all of my body. There's more of them than one person can use. If I went to heaven, as some claim, that that angels came down and took me bodily to heaven, then there would be no body parts left. So one of those can't be true, or both of them in this case. That Da Vinci was not at the Last Supper or alive at any point during that time, so he would have no way to know or put in some kind of special code in his paintings. And as I said earlier, I wasn't a whore. I continued to do my best to live according to the way and to preach according to the way. And despite the many claims otherwise, Gregory of Tours had it right in his book. I can't remember if it's called the Book of Martyrs or the Book of Saints, but he says that I did end up in Ephesus, and I did. And that is where I died. And the Emperor Pope Leo eventually had my remains moved to Constantinople for fear of them being taken. What matters most out of everything is the message. As Jesus said, "Who do you say I am?" And what matters is his message. to love God and to love each other. There was a man in the 18th century, 1800 something, that wrote a poem that I like a lot, that I think is true of me. And so remember this about me. Not she with traitorous kiss her Savior stung. Not she denied him with unholy tongue. She, while apostles shrank, could dangers brave, though remember I am an apostle, last at the cross, earliest at the grave. Love God, take care of each other. That's the message. Go in peace.